You lose someone. You don't know what to do with your hands. You stand in a room full of flowers you didn't choose and music you didn't pick. And somewhere underneath the ceremony, a much older question is sitting quietly in your chest. What is this for? Who decided we do it this way? It feels ancient. It feels automatic, like grief comes with instructions already written into you. It does, just not the ones you think. 34,000 years ago, on the cold plain of what is now Russia, a community buried two children. They were laid head to head, like they were facing each other in conversation. Over 13,000 ivory beads were placed across their bodies. Each one had taken roughly 45 minutes to carve by hand. Do the math, and that's over 10,000 hours of labor poured into two small bodies that would never wear any of it, never see any of it, never know any of it happened. That site is called Sungir, and it is one of the strangest, most revealing windows we have into how old your grief actually is. Picture the climate first. This was not a gentle world. The plain around Sungir during this period was cold, open, and unforgiving, the kind of landscape where a single bad season could mean starvation for an entire group. Every fire needed fuel. Every meal needed someone willing to risk the hunt. In a world like that, time itself was the rarest resource a person owned, and somebody chose to spend an almost unthinkable amount of it on two bodies that would never benefit from the gift. Because here's the part that should stop you. Those children weren't buried quickly. They weren't buried out of panic or disgust or fear of disease. Someone planned this. Someone gathered ivory. Someone spent months, maybe longer, shaping beads one at a time by firelight for people who could no longer say thank you. Why would a hunter-gatherer society, one fighting for calories every single day, spend 10,000 hours on the dead? This is where the story gets uncomfortable, and then it gets beautiful. For most of human history, death was not hidden behind hospital walls or funeral home doors. It happened in the open. It happened in the cave, in the camp, a few feet from where people slept and ate and raised their children. You didn't get the luxury of distance. The body was right there, and the question of what to do with it could not be postponed. Anthropologist Mary Steiner has spent years studying when and how this question first got an answer. Her research points to deliberate burial appearing by at least 120,000 years ago, with the most convincing early evidence coming from sites where bodies were not just discarded but placed, positioned, cared for. That single shift from leaving a body where it fell to choosing where it would rest marks something enormous in the story of human minds. It marks the moment a corpse stopped being just a corpse. Steiner's work doesn't suggest this happened everywhere at once, or that some single genius invented the idea of burial and passed it down a family tree. The picture is messier and honestly more convincing because of it. Different groups, in different places, separated by vast stretches of time and geography, kept independently landing on the same impulse. Don't just leave them, place them, mark the spot. That kind of convergence usually means you're looking at something close to a universal feature of the human mind, not a cultural accident that happened to spread. Think about what that requires. To bury someone on purpose, you need to hold two ideas in your head at once. This person is gone, and this person still matters. Animals don't do this. A herd will sometimes linger near a dead member, sniff at the body, even appear distressed. But they don't dig a hole. They don't choose a position. They don't decorate a body that can no longer see the decoration. You do. Your ancestors did. And the strange, aching thing is they did it for an audience that wasn't watching. Researchers studying Upper Paleolithic mortuary sites, including work by archaeologists Jacopo Crezzini and Jamie Hodgkins, have shown just how much variation existed in these early practices. Some bodies buried with elaborate goods, others with almost nothing at all, some left exposed, others carefully placed. That variation matters. It tells you this wasn't one universal rulebook handed down from the sky. It was communities, again and again, independently arriving at the same conclusion. Something has to be done. Doing nothing is not an option. That conclusion is older than agriculture, older than cities, older than almost every word you use today. Across these sites, the materials repeat in ways that feel almost like a shared language. Marine shells carried hundreds of kilometers inland, animal teeth drilled and threaded into pendants, carved bone tools placed beside hands that would never use them again. None of these objects fed anyone. None of them kept the cold out. They existed for one purpose only: to be looked at, to be touched, to mean something to the living long after the person beside them had gone still. That's worth sitting with. The further back you go, the more you'd expect human behavior to strip down to pure survival, food, shelter, warmth, nothing else. Instead, the deeper you dig, almost literally, the more you find evidence of people setting survival aside, just for a moment, to do something that served no biological function at all except comfort, except memory, except love, if that word even applies to a species this old. Maybe it always did. Now look at the beads again. 13,000 of them on two children who were maybe 10 and 12 years old when they died. Whoever buried them did not need to do this for survival. Beads do not hunt. Beads do not keep you warm. In a world where every hour of daylight mattered for finding food, 10,000 hours went somewhere else entirely. It went into meaning. That is the part that should land differently than you expect. We tend to picture early humans as purely practical creatures, scraping by, thinking only of the next meal. But the archaeological record keeps insisting on something stranger. Even when survival was brutal, even when calories were currency, people still found the time, the materials, and the will. To say this death matters more than convenience. Grief, it turns out, was never a luxury. It was load-bearing. Here's the twist most people never connect: the ochre. That deep red pigment found across nearly every elaborate Paleolithic burial, including Sungir, including sites across Europe and the Levant, was not just decoration. Ochre takes effort to find, grind, and apply. It stains. It marks the body as different, set apart, transformed. Some researchers connect this to ideas of blood, of life force, of trying to visually restore something that death had taken away. You don't know if that interpretation is exactly right. No one alive can ask the people who did it. But you do know this: they were trying to say something with color, with pattern, with placement, because words alone weren't enough. Sound familiar? It should. You still do this. You choose flowers because plain dirt feels wrong. You play a specific song because silence feels wrong. You bring food to a grieving family because words alone feel insufficient for what you're trying to communicate. None of that is logical. None of it keeps anyone alive. And all of it is exactly what was happening on that Russian plain 34,000 years ago, just with ochre instead of lilies, and ivory instead of stone engravings on a headstone. The tools changed. The impulse didn't move an inch. There's a darker thread running through some of these early burials too, one researchers are still cautious about. At Sungir, the unusual circumstances of the children's deaths and their elaborate, almost matched burial have led some to suggest the possibility of ritual significance beyond ordinary death, though this remains debated and far from settled. What is not debated is this: whatever happened to those two children, their community responded with extraordinary care, not avoidance. They were not buried to be forgotten. They were buried to be remembered. That single distinction might be the most human thing in this entire story. Because forgetting is easy. Forgetting is what happens by default, what time does to everything left untouched. Remembering takes effort. It takes beads. It takes ochre. It takes 10,000 hours by firelight. Your ancestors were not fighting against death itself. They couldn't win that fight. No one can. They were fighting against disappearance. Against the idea that a person could simply stop existing in the minds of everyone who loved them the moment their heart stopped. You're still fighting that exact fight. Every time you keep a voicemail you'll never delete. Every time you wear a parent's old jacket. Every time you visit a grave that holds nothing but bone and tell it about your day anyway. That's not irrational. That's 34,000 years of practice expressing itself through you. Consider how strange that is for a moment. You live in a world of climate control, instant communication, and medicine that didn't exist 100 years ago. Almost nothing about your daily life resembles a hunter-gatherer camp on a frozen Russian plain, and yet the moment someone you love dies, you reach for almost exactly what they reached for: an object to mark the loss, a gathering to share it, a place, however small, that says this mattered, this person existed, this is not nothing. Modern psychology has its own word for part of this. Continuing bonds, a concept researchers use to describe how grieving people maintain an ongoing relationship with someone who has died through memory, ritual, and symbolic objects, rather than simply severing the connection and moving on. That idea sounds clinical until you realize it's just a new name for 10,000 hours of ivory beads. The bond didn't end, it changed shape. So when you stand in that room with the flowers you didn't choose, and the music that feels strangely necessary, you're not performing some artificial modern ritual. You're doing the oldest thing your species knows how to do. You are taking something that has ended and refusing to let it disappear quietly. The Sungir children never knew their names would still mean something to strangers tens of thousands of years later. They never knew researchers would study every bead, every bone, every trace of ochre, trying to understand the people who loved them enough to spend 10,000 hours on a goodbye. But here's the reframe. You lose someone and you don't know what to do with your hands. Maybe that's the wrong question. Your hands have known what to do for longer than memory itself. They reach for flowers, they reach for photographs, they reach for anything that says this person mattered, even now, even with no one left to convince. You're not improvising grief, you're remembering it.